Nice to meet all of you. So my name's Cybelle. I'm a postdoc at Penn. And I did my PhD at University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, before I came here. I've been here about 2.5 years, and I'm happy to help guide you through the process of building your mentorship and support network. So, right. So, I kind of have to preface this with just the overall context of, what you're trying to do and where the PhD fits in with your personal and professional development. So, it's supposed to be a tool to develop you in a certain way. And the connections that you're building along the way are going to be helping you to build you into that person that you want to become. And so, most of this talk assumes that you want to get the PhD. But as you're even developing your PhD application, question that. And honestly, I think it will help you pick a better program for yourself, even if you do decide to do the PhD, because it will make you more in touch with what are your values, as a tool to develop yourself into the best possible person. And thinking about this in this more holistic way is going to help your grad school applications. It's going to help you while you are a PhD, and things often get hard. There are ups and downs. To stay focused on your goals and your values, and to keep what you're doing grounded in sort of the reality of what you want for yourself. So yeah, if you are interested in becoming faculty or doing research in a technical field, a PhD is a great choice. But yeah, if you're less committed to those options, the PhD might still be a way to help you develop parts of yourself, and it could still be the right choice for you. But I think it's useful to consider other ways that you can develop those things and learn the skill sets that you need. Because sometimes there are alternatives where you're making more money, you're happier, it's good to brainstorm that stuff now. Yeah, and just, I would be wary of if it's a terminal master's degree that charges a lot of tuition, I would think multiple times before you commit to something like that, because a lot of times those are tools for the school to make money, and it may not be the best choice for you. Okay. Right. So the talk has 3 things that we try to cover. Mentoring. So I'm going to focus a lot on the process that you could use, and some of this is sort of based on my personal experience, and again as people are lecturing at you or whatever, giving you advice, remember that it's one person's opinion, okay? So everyone has a different view on some of these things, okay? So some of this I'm going to try to open up to be more of a discussion format. But yeah, and then we'll talk a little bit more about your broader support network, which kind of bleeds into a discussion about how professional networking in academia works, what some tools are for you to survive and make the most of it. So yeah, we'll start with mentoring. So, all right, so let's start with this exercise. So think about a mentor in your life that has influenced you positively. And what are things that you think that they did right? So maybe if you guys can take a minute to think about it, talk to the people next to you, and then we'll get a few of you to talk about some of the experiences that you've had that were positive with a mentor. Some positive mentoring experiences you've had. What are some nice things they've done? Yeah.
I had a mentor who came from the health industry, and he was great in helping me develop different competencies. So, and he listened very well, which I feel is very important.
Yeah.
But he had quite limited expertise on things that I'm interested in. Mm-hmm. But he was willing to acknowledge that he didn't have that expertise, and he was really good with just being there, which I think is a very important thing.
Right. Yeah, this is great. So I think there's a lot of good things in that example. So that they're there for you professionally, that they're teaching you a skill set that you might be able to use to get yourself into the next position you want, but they don't know everything. Yeah.
I think another positive basic characteristic of mentors is that they are willing to have patience to answer some of the questions that may look a bit silly from a professional's perspective, but nevertheless, they may be not apparent to the mentee. So patience, I think, very important.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, that like not just blowing you off like, oh, this is silly, but like being more like open and accommodating. I think that's also really important. Anybody else? Yeah.
My mentor that is my current like senior thesis advisor, like she's like really super interested in just like my general well-being. And I remember like when we were like choosing like senior thesis advisors, I've been working with her like for like all my like 3 years like prior to like this year, and like she like made sure to like check in to see if like there were like other people's work that I was more interested in, and she didn't like have any expectations for like us like continuing. So she was just very open-minded about like my general success.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like I also, part of why I picked my mentor was because she had this vibe of caring about holistic well-being that she really kind of projected in the interview. And I think that actually was true to the way that she mentored. So, yeah.
Going off of not having the skill development, my mentor, she's a developmental psychologist, and I'm interested in clinical. And an amazing thing that she did for me was give me access to other professionals in the field and introduce me to people that are more in line with my goals.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Like, a good mentor doesn't try to do everything themselves. They're like using their network to connect you to the people that will help you on the next step. Yeah. Sorry, this is kind of low down. To connect you. Okay. Yeah, and then maybe this will be the last one.
Oh, like very related to that, like I feel like some mentors may like be really passionate about like students staying within their field, but I think a good mentor is also open to the different directions that their mentee might want to go
Yes.
into, and try to understand the rationale behind that and support them, like such as connecting them to other networks as much as possible.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's like increasingly important because there are just so many different options for the types of like brilliant people that you guys are that are like applying to these PhD programs. So like having a mentor that can keep an open mind about different career options and isn't going to just, you know, for example, funnel you into some like stream that is less productive if you mention the word industry. Like, it's better to have somebody that is open-minded and flexible and cares about you. So like, about industry/alternative careers, career paths. Yeah. Okay. I think that's actually a pretty good list already. And so yeah, I just have a couple more slides, and then we'll intersperse more discussions as we go. So so I think some of the things that were mentioned were sometimes your current mentor doesn't have the exact skill set that you need. They are like helping you on your journey, and they're like recognizing their own limitations ideally instead of trying to do everything. So your primary faculty mentor, they're not the end-all be-all of your support. They're not going to be able to do everything for you. They're not going to be able to understand every facet of you, and like that's not what they can do. No one person can do that. And so being with somebody that like understands this and can connect you to other people is really important. But you don't just have to look at the faculty member, although you can, like your committee members, if you have co-mentors or collaborators, those can be other faculty level mentors that can help you, not just your primary. But we'll talk more about it, but yeah, your lab mates, your peers, your family, and so on also help. And some mentors can be like more oriented to helping with aspects of belonging to an underrepresented group. So in some cases that is your faculty mentor, and that's really great. And In other cases, you could seek support from somebody else that's in academia. There are like professional organizations, or you could just have a group of friends. So, for example, one of the co-founders of the Spark Society, which does like, they try to do empowerment for people of color in cognitive science, was talking about how he'll still like regularly meet, even at the professor level, with kind of a multidisciplinary group of African American professionals, and they'll just like talk about stuff. And not all of them are in academia, but they can support each other. So there are different ways that you can kind of create that support while like building the path that you want for yourself. Yeah.
What was the name of that like group or professional society?
Oh yeah. Sorry, I should have put it up there. The Spark Society. Yeah. But there are like other ones. I think Black and Neuro is a little newer, but yeah. Kindle, aren't you part of that? Or is it?
Well, there's like a Slack page that they have, and I'm in that, but so I could like share it if anyone wants. So.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Yeah. And so yeah, there's like various organizations. There's usually some organizations at your school too where you can connect, and so yeah. Right. So what can you expect from a faculty mentor? They'll give you obviously career guidance. They should establish like clear expectations for you and your work. Career guidance, establishing lab culture and expectations, discussing science, and sharing the joy of doing and learning science. You know, like treating it like a joyful activity, ideally. Helping you learn some technical skills, designing experiments, interpreting, analyzing data, creating like really effective research products. So posters, journal articles, maybe giving you some experience with grant writing. And if you're in more of an industry-focused field, you could develop some patents together. And then get like how to give a good academic talk, because that's actually really critical to your moving forward to get a faculty position. Like your faculty job talk is like one of the most critical things. So learning how to give a good talk is really important. And then yeah, they'll facilitate connecting you with people. They will promote your career. They'll promote your work in their talks and things like that. Yeah. And then they should be accommodating, like at a minimum for like really major life events that you encounter, like you should expect that they're gonna accommodate to a certain extent for that kind of thing. Some will give like more or less like support at like a personal level. Personally, I think the best mentors are willing to, on some level, connect with you when you're going through some personal stuff that's affecting your work, but not everyone is like as comfortable doing that. And that's kind of okay. That one is not like something that is like as expected for their job. It's sort of going a little bit above and beyond. But yeah, so right. So so as you guys are picking out who you want to be your mentors, what types of things are you thinking about? Like, how are you picking?
Yeah. I think for me, an important thing is like being able to have a conversation as like people beyond just like the professor-student status.
Yeah.
Of their identity.
Talking as people. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's good. Anything else? Other factors you guys are thinking about? Yeah.
I think like a balance of hands-on and hands-off mentors. Like
Yeah.
hands-on, like since it's graduate research, and then hands-off when I really want to do it myself.
Yeah, exactly. So like maybe like some flexibility in how hands-on they are. Yeah.
I guess what previous mentees have said about the mentor.
Yeah, their reputation. Yeah. Yep. Okay.
Interest alignment.
What?
Alignment of
Yeah, that's that's really important. That's actually one of the first things you'll probably be thinking about. Yep. Okay. And then, yeah, any last one before we move on? Okay. So, yeah, and then are there other things that you're thinking about for like what programs you're applying to or what schools? Because like maybe for the PhD level, you do kind of tend to go picking the mentor and then figuring out where they are and seeing if that's going to work. But like, what do you think about in terms of programs in schools? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I'm thinking about if I'm applying to a community-based program, not a professor-based, I would aim for programs that have multiple professors that I'm interested in, such that if I rotate with one of them and I found that I don't really like their research, I still have other options inside the program.
Yeah, that's critical. So yeah, lab rotations can be really appealing when for people that want to like try a variety of different things before they settle. So yeah. Oh my God, that would be great. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
The success of the current students and alumni, like their percentage that they get of APA accredited internships.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's great. So like placements. Yeah, placements is huge. And most faculty that have a website will post their placement record. Like where are their alumni? If you go to their you might be like, oh, what's the deal with when I go to their personnel page, there's this long list of all their alumni and their current positions? Well, that's because it's to help people like you figure out if the people that go through their lab are getting good placements. Yeah.
Whether it's like a collaborative environment, like whether like different labs work with each other or not.
Yeah, like the degree of collaborativeness of the lab can really vary. So some labs are sort of like these like, I mean, insular cults is kind of a negative term, but like maybe like that could be a good thing, maybe, but usually it's not, I guess. But yeah, the degree to which you are expected to work primarily just on your one project in the lab, like how collaborative you are, even with other lab members, can vary a lot by lab culture. And then, of course, like the degree to which you're like encouraged to attend multiple lab meetings or like make connections with other groups to do more collaborative efforts. Yeah.
So, location and the lab size.
Yeah. Okay. Location is huge. I really wish I had thought about that more, to be honest. And lab size also really matters. There are some, I would say, coming from, so I've been in psychology departments, and most of the labs there tend to be run by the PI, where the PI kind of fulfills most of the primary mentorship roles. But in some really large labs, they delegate. So depending on what field you're in, some of your mentoring roles will be fulfilled more by the postdoc or by like an assistant professor rather than by the PI of the lab. So like kind of understanding that lab structure is important.
Acceptability of diversity.
Yeah, exactly. How open they are to diversity at like every level. So yeah.
Any like other resources on campus, like if you deal with mental health issues or like accessibility issues?
Yeah, mental health and accessibility issues are huge too. And yeah, like how good is the support network that they're going to give you? Like mental health issues do come up a lot during the PhD. It's just like for anyone, your 20s is a period of growth, and it's like really challenging. And I think the PhD can kind of exacerbate some of that because it's so high pressure, and a lot of people who are like, so, you're all so brilliant, but you're like, a lot of people finally hit that wall where they're like, oh my God, I'm really struggling, I can't do this. And it's the first time it's ever happened to them because you're so smart. Like, it's the first time you've ever experienced that. And so it can be like really hard, but not just for that reason. There's like multiple reasons, yeah. Okay, so yeah, maybe I'll just list a couple that Oh yeah, sorry. So like, I think those are all really good things to think about. So here's sort of my outline of like logistically, what are the types of things that like I was thinking about when I was applying that, and like what's the rough timeline of when you try to figure some of this stuff out and ask about it. So, so the summer before you apply, that's sort of when you do your first round, right? Okay, so this is based on things like their basic fit to your research interests. Is their school a non-starter? Like, is their school in a really like rural, isolated area and you know you wouldn't be happy? Or is it in New York City and you're like, this is too stressful for me, I would not be happy living there? Like, those could be factors that you don't, want for, like, that for some people would just be a non-starter. In which case, just don't worry about it anymore. But yeah, so you can look at papers that you enjoyed reading. Who's the first author? Are they faculty now? Who's the senior author? The senior author would come last in the list usually, in the fields that I think you guys belong to. Or if you've seen talks online or at your university, or if you had the chance to attend any conferences as an undergrad, which you may or may not have yet, and that's okay. Who were they? If they were a trainee, who was their mentor? These are good questions to ask. For senior faculty, you can also kind of look down, like, who are their alumni? Like, maybe this person is about to retire, so, like, if they're, like, 65, so maybe you could look at who are some alumni from their lab that are faculty, and then, like, look a little bit at their lab websites to see if they're doing exciting stuff. Yeah, and then, there are a list of like top 10 schools in your field. You can just be like, well, what's their basic program like? You could also like try to tap your existing network to see like, are there any schools that have like a group of productive faculty in this area where there's like more than one and they're able to like collaborate and talk to each other? Because that sounds like a pretty good environment usually for the PhD. Yep. Okay, I think, wow, we only have like 25 minutes to talk about that. So round 2, now you're narrowing it down. So the 10 to 15 number, that's my guesstimate. I don't know if it's like accurate anymore. But some rough number of people that you could share with somebody else. So now you're going to be looking at how excited you are, like not just fit, but like, do you think their current research program, when you look at their lab website, has some really cool, exciting prompts that you want to get involved in and like enjoy being a part of. Check for the placement record on their website. And then there are trade-offs between if they're junior versus senior faculty. So junior faculty tend to be more hands-on. If they're pre-tenure, there's a lot of pressure for them to get tenure. So that can be good because they could be working with you like a lot more closely and trying to develop that. But the downside is they've been in the field fewer years, so they have fewer connections. The senior faculty have more connections. They've also been a mentor for longer, so that can give them like more insight into potentially, they've had more opportunities to learn how to be a good mentor. Maybe not all of them took them, but right, and then you're going to show this list to somebody whose opinion you trust, either a faculty mentor that you have now, if you have one, or somebody else in your field that maybe is at your school or that you can get connected to that's willing to do this for you. And they'll like look it over and kind of be able to give you the gist of like what's their general reputation, are they easy to work with, do their students do good work, that kind of thing. And they can guide you a little bit more with some more of the inside scoop. Yeah.
What happens if you like join a junior faculty's lab and then don't get tenure?
Yeah, so that happens a bit. So you have 2 options at that point, usually. One is to follow them to a new position. So at the same time you apply for tenure, you also apply for a bunch of jobs. So a lot of people that don't get tenure at their initial institution, especially if it's like a very prestigious institution, will then get, they will still be faculty and have a good career and get tenure at another smaller school. So that can be, you can follow them to a new location. Another option would be to select a new advisor and continue at your current program. And so that's also one reason why it's nice to have a little bit of redundancy. Like, if any, there can be all sorts of things. They could move away, not get tenure, or something could happen to your mentor. They could get sick, or you could have like an interpersonal conflict with them. All of these are good reasons to try to find a school where there's more than one person that you feel like could be a potential mentor to you, in case you want to stay there and you don't want to move. Yeah, especially if they're pre-tenure. Yeah. So, okay. Okay, so third round of screening is kind of done by the faculty. You email them, and then they tell you if they're accepting new students, basically. So you'll ask if they're accepting new students. You might briefly state why you're interested in and excited about the lab, like you read some cool papers they did, and it's great. So you're kind of leaving a good initial impression. And this is usually done kind of late summer, early fall. And then attach your CV. And then don't be worried if they don't reply right away. Faculty are like notoriously flaky, so you might have to email them in a week or again in 2 weeks if they're like senior faculty especially. Doesn't mean they're not interested, but yeah, you're just trying to figure out who's taking somebody in. So if once you have gone through these 3 steps, you still have too many schools to apply to, like you don't want to apply to 15 schools, you only want to apply to, I don't know, 7 or 10. But that, of course, depends on your personal interests and, things like that. You might, I only applied to 5 schools, so, you don't have to apply to, a ton of them. But, yeah, if your list is not narrow enough, narrow it down based on, what you're most excited about and, prioritize, those applications. Okay, so, right. And we already talked about some of these other things. Right. So the 4th round is sort of you're interviewing them. So in some fields they'll have these pre-interviews. I think that got mentioned in the last presentation. That didn't exist when I applied, so I don't have direct experience with that. But I would recommend asking the tough questions at the official interview round rather than in the pre-interview, unless it really comes up and it feels right. But yeah, so, and we'll talk a little bit about things how to get certain types of information. So okay, are there green, I guess we've talked a little bit about green flags, what makes a good mentor. Are there any red flags that you guys are thinking about where it's I don't know if I'd feel comfortable working with this person? Yeah.
A mentor who would pit his graduate students against each other.
Oh yeah, that sounds pretty bad. Yeah, so encouraging competition instead of support within the lab, that would be a big red flag. That actually sounds unhealthy. Yeah. Yeah.
I think seeing multiple students leave the lab after so many years could be a red flag.
Yeah, potentially yes. So that has to be contextualized. That has to be a relative thing because with PhD programs, the attrition rate is pretty high. But yeah, you would want to understand what the backstory was, why they're leaving. Yeah. Yeah.
Lab members look unhappy.
Yeah, that's a really great one. Yep. So yeah, just in the interest of time, I think those are a lot of the main things to look for. So how would you find out some of this information about red flags and green flags, the lab environment, and so on? So when you're at the interview, the official interview, or whenever you feel comfortable when you're communicating with them, you could ask them about how hands-on they are. So a lot of them will be well, I'll be as hands-on as you want me to be. But some of them will have a reputation for being a little micromanagey, and that works for some people, but not most people probably if they're too much. And other people are just absent. You meet with them once every 6 months, but you're kind of getting the name brand of their lab attached to you. And so you have to figure out, okay, who would be my real mentors? Would this work for me or not? Yeah, and then what's their mentoring philosophy? what are expectations for the amount of time you spend in the lab and things like that. Even if they don't like that question, I think that can also be revealing, yeah, the way they respond to it will be revealing, even if they're like, there's no set hours. And then, yeah, and asking if it's okay for you to contact their current grad students directly by email. So the lab members and grad students in the program, so the ones in the lab, you definitely want to talk to you. I'd also talk to a few people outside the lab that are in the program that have sort of the outsider's view of that lab. Because the people in the lab, most of the time will be honest with you, but sometimes if it's a really toxic environment, they might not feel comfortable being totally honest with a prospective student. So yeah, I mean, this is an unfortunate thing that I have to tell you guys, but you want to know, are they abusive? Do they have a history of harassment? That kind of thing. So most of them aren't, but you still want to check. So yeah.
Do PIs treat their postdocs and grad students differently? Do they have different perspectives on the PI?
Oh, sorry. Do the PIs do what? Sorry.
Do they treat their grad students and their postdocs differently? Do they have a different perspective on the PI?
Oh yeah. I think that when you're applying for the grad student level, talking to the grad students is probably going to be more revealing. Postdocs are a different bag, and I think in some labs can be treated worse than the grad students. I mean, it really just depends. So they can be treated differently, and if you want to get your view of the graduate student experience, talking to the grad students, I would prioritize that. But if you are interested in one of the postdocs' work, or if you want their perspective, you can totally reach out to them too. Thank you. So, yeah, I mean, the postdocs will also have a good sense of it, but yeah, so don't discount them, but they do sometimes get treated differently within a lab, yeah. So, yeah, and if there's anything that you're not sure about, some of the language used about them that could be a potential red flag, try to clarify it. Go to the happy hour with the grad students at your interview weekend and just be talk it out, figure out what the real scoop is. Okay. Does anybody else have? Maybe we can actually skip that one, and people can discuss it afterwards in the interest of time. But yeah, okay. So the PhD is a long road. Having lived in a town that was too small for me with a fantastic mentor who I loved, but I felt really constrained, I'd say make sure you choose a place where you'll be happy for the entire duration of a 5-year long haul or a 6-year, Make sure it's a place where you can enjoy the journey. So that can include having a supportive mentor, being in a place that you enjoy living, where you can make connections with people that interest you, and all of those things. Okay. Your relationship with your mentor lasts longer than a lot of marriages. Less. No, I mean, really. So I kind of think of it as sort of like a marriage in some ways. So you need clear communication, expectations, boundary setting from the outset as much as you can. I mean, especially after you get accepted into the program, really try to be honest with them about what your goals are. That can help you avoid conflicts in the first place. When there are changes or new conflicts arise, communication can help resolve them. So yeah, and when you can't resolve or process the situation completely just by talking to your advisor directly, then you have other options. So the first line of defense is your lab mates, your peers, and your friends, and other people in the department too, that are at your trainee level. For major conflicts, you can talk to other faculty members confidentially about your situation, in most cases. So in some cases, you want to give your advisor a heads up that you're, depending on what the nature of the conversation is. But yeah, don't feel like you're alone. You don't have to be alone. And other faculty can help you. They won't necessarily be hey, join my lab. I mean, but they will definitely talk to you. For serious stuff, there are options to get an external mediator or to get your department chair involved. That's for sexual harassment level, really bad, whatever. And then the worst case scenario, which might not be from the serious stuff. It could just be an interpersonal thing, or something else happen. It can be possible to switch advisors. So yeah, you're going to tap your broader support network. So that's entering into the next part of this. So yeah, what's your broader support network? And how do you do professional networking? So I'm going to just kind of do a little bit of an overview. So who's in your broader support network? Well, you have your co-mentors, committee members, collaborators, your mentors network, other faculty in the department, senior and junior lab mates, your peers, people that you go to conferences with, your counselor, your mental and physical healthcare team, and yeah, friends and family outside of academia. Those are all really critical to making it through a PhD. Like, don't underestimate friends and family. They will help support you. So yeah, and I would say make sure you put time in to socialize. Treat it like sleeping. You need to sleep to be able to function in a PhD. You need to socialize regularly to be able to function. You cannot just lock yourself in doing research all the time, feeling really unhappy and feeling alone. That will not work. So you'll actually lose your productivity if you try to regularly reach out to people and socialize. So yeah, your senior and junior lab mates are really critical. So different labs will have different cultures and expectations about exactly how this will work, but no matter what, try to be friends with, you don't have to be like really good friends with them if you don't like them as a person, but try to be collegial, and make friendships when you can. Because your lab mates are going to usually help you with learning techniques important to your research, and also dealing with all sorts of statistical and technical problems that come up where the PI is too busy to manage that for you. So yeah, it's a give and take, and it's also a pay it forward model. The more senior lab members are expected to help the more junior ones. But sometimes if another junior lab member knows a skill that you want to learn, you can help each other or whatever. Or a senior one could learn from a junior one. Yeah, and just try to be really conscientious of their time and reciprocally generous. So you're not asking them to debug every flaw in your code, but you could say, hey, I have this bug in my code that I haven't been able to fix. Here's the error message. Have you ever seen something like this? And then they could be like, oh yeah, I have seen that. Here's how you solve it. That's kind of the level where they can help you. So yeah, how to make friendships with people at different labs. Attending at different labs lab meetings, attending social events, either departmental or informal mixers. Don't just talk to people you already know. And then regularly repeating events can be great if you regularly go to at least one thing. That way you can kind of develop a more meaningful relationship with somebody in another lab than if you're just doing a one-off the department Christmas party, So yeah, there's all sorts of things that you can either attend or help plan: journals, book clubs, technical workshop series, and internal conferences. You could get involved in student government. These are all great ways to make connections with other people at your institution. And then, so attending external academic conferences and workshops. Again, don't just talk to the people you already know. It's really tempting, but if you push yourself to try to go to different people's posters, try to ask good questions and send follow-up emails to people if their work really interests you. And I regularly will go to lunch or dinner with a different lab. Not everyone feels comfortable doing that, but it's been fantastic for building a network. Because I also legitimately like those people and I'm interested in their work. So it can be fun. Also, your lab might have alumni get-togethers at these things where you can go to dinner with all of their alumni network. So also in emails with friends and colleagues that are more distant, ask them what conferences they're going to, and then try to set up lunch at the conference. That can be a way to maintain ongoing connections with people that maybe you crossed paths earlier in your career, but not as much anymore, but you do still see each other at the same conference. So yeah, and then, I mentioned ask good questions. So what does that really mean? This is sort of I kind of hate that it is this, but it can be sort of a way to score points in academia. It raises your profile when you ask good questions at conferences and things like that. And that can also be really good for developing your professional network. what it is thoughtful, polite, and constructive. You're raising a critical question about research findings. They're like either something about it or the interpretation of it. It could be a clarification question, that's fine too. And then you're trying to connect it to a paper you read, something you learned about in class, a related literature, or some other aspect of the literature that is trying to engage with already. So yeah, but yeah, the speaker is your colleague, and you're not just trying to like score points by like making yourself look smart. You're trying to help them with their research, and you're trying to advance the field, and you're acknowledging that no one researcher can do everything, right? Like it's never perfect. So yeah, but that can be really great. So science Twitter is a thing now. When you go to conferences, that's a great time to follow each other on Twitter. Like growing your Twitter following that way. You'll be promoting your work, tweeting out your talks, posters, and publications, engaging in public discussions on Twitter. I would be careful about getting into like a really high profile one when you're early in your career, just because of the unfortunate way that things are structured. But you definitely can start to like reply to people and make conversations with people whose work interests you. You'll see some people on Twitter being very blunt. Most of them are tenured faculty. Just be aware they cannot lose their job. That is why they're being so honest. But, you know, like, okay. And I don't know if there's other social media that I don't know about, but maybe, I guess we're kind of running out of time. So Twitter's the main one that I'm aware of. Facebook I use more for friends. Some people use that for sciencey stuff too. Okay. Talks with invited speakers whose work interests you. Try to get lunch with them or to get a meeting with them. Sometimes you'll get emails that are like, do you want to get to meet with the speaker? Do you want to go out to lunch with the speaker? If their work really interests you, really try to do it. Because it's a great way to connect with the other people that are also interested in it, which are people at your institution that maybe you don't know as well as you should. But also, you can make that connection with the speaker themselves. Try to raise your visibility at the talk by asking a good question if you have it. And then, if you're really interested with their project or work, you can email them afterwards. There's a window where professors are more responsive to email that's like within a few days of their talk at your institution. So like being aware that that's actually an opportunity where they're more responsive than usual, it's like feels less like cold contacting them is good. Right, so when you go to conferences, sometimes you'll be like, oh hey, we have this idea for a collaboration. That's great. Other collaborations will come from, I would say most of the sustained collaborations come from like internal connections your advisor has with other people, but you could like also potentially try to develop one with a collaborator at a conference. So most of the time the conference ones don't work out, and so you shouldn't feel bad if that doesn't happen. But if you want it to really work, you have to put like sustained work into like actually making it happen. So you need to follow up with them by email, set up a meeting, set some clear milestones, and then some semi-regular meetings with them to really solidify that this is actually happening. It's a give and take. Again, you're being conscientious. You're trying to follow through on developing projects, especially if the collaborator is going to put effort into doing something for you to like get this off the ground. You have to be respectful of the time and effort they're putting in and try to follow through. And then once it's really clear that this is really happening, try to like figure out what your goals are. You know, if it looks like it's going to turn into a paper, talk about authorship and things like that. Like who will do what for the paper, who will be responsible for what, who will be in what order in the author list and stuff like that. So just like clarity on that early on can be really helpful. And then this is like my last slide. So again, your friends and family are so important for making it through the PhD. Some really great career advice can come from people outside of academia. Do you guys have any examples? Like I have a few for like good advice you've gotten from people outside of academia, and maybe even some of the people that have done the PhD already could be like, here's something that nobody in the PhD program was like telling me, but I'm really glad I heard from somebody outside. Any takers? Oh, yeah.
Yes, one of the advice I received with that is if you do something, do it well. And basically, do not do something merely for the sake of doing something. Be sure on whether you actually want this thing to be done, what kind of contribution it receives, and also if you're determined on that, do the best you can. Don't try to slack.
Right. Yeah. I've heard that too, and I think that is good. Yeah.
And one I thought was comparison is a thief of joy.
Wait, what?
Comparison is a thief of joy.
Is the death of joy. Yes. Yeah. Don't compare yourself constantly to other people. I've also heard a variant of that, which is don't compare yourself to other people, and if you do, always compare yourself to somebody that's doing much, much worse than you. Yeah.
I want to promote a social media platform that came off of Twitter. It's called Psych in Out. And
Okay.
they do literally Psych in Out. Just look it up. You will find it. They will love you and give you a mentor.
Oh, what? That's great. Okay, cool. That seems really useful. I'm going to write that down for myself so that whenever these slides get out and things like that, I think it would be nice to include some of the things that we came up with and listed during this.
They have 1,000-person Slack.
Oh, wow, cool. Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention Slack. Slack can also be great. Sometimes for technical stuff, if you do fMRI, we have an MRI Slack, and that can connect you to people just to get your foot with a technique if it's a shared lab space. Yeah. Okay, yeah, and my sister told me something don't be too afraid of your boss because it will actually make, don't be too afraid of losing your job because you won't actually do the best job you can in terms of being communicative with your boss. And at least for me, I really wish I had gotten that advice earlier. Yeah, but you can get really sage advice from your friends and family, and I mean, you have to be selective, but yeah, they can be helpful. So, all right. I think that's kind of it. So, oops. So yeah, and that's also time. So, thank you.